Hi, welcome back. I'm Shane Green, the Culture Hacker, and today I want to talk about training. In 2018, companies will spend almost $100 billion on training. So the question begs itself, are they getting their money's worth? Unfortunately, in many organizations, the answer is no. So let's think for a moment, what does training look like from an employee's perspective? Well, usually they get told or scheduled that they're going to training, often not told exactly what the training's about or the expectations. You see, they've been to training in the past and it was pretty boring, it was pretty bad. So they're already walking in the door thinking this is a complete waste of their time. And no matter how good that training is, they don't really get anything out of it. And so they walk out of that class knowing that they've signed their name, ticked the box, got out of it for the year, and probably go, they survived. The problem is they actually didn't learn anything, they weren't stimulated, and they're not going to actually evolve behaviors or develop skills from that type of training. Now, after the training, they might hear it mentioned a couple of times, but most of the time, the only time training is brought up is when a mistake is made or when something goes wrong. You know, the manager comes up and says, hey, you should know better than that. You went to the training. Listen, most training is based around this event type mentality. It doesn't have anything before or anything after, and therefore it is a waste of time. And so what we want to be able to think about is what your training program should look like if you truly want it to be effective. And there's 4 key elements that I want you to think about. The first one is that pre-training stimulation. Listen, before anyone walks into the class, you've got to get people thinking. You've got to set the expectations, you've got to let them know what it's about, and most importantly, tell them why it's important. You see, if we can open up the mind before they walk through the door, it will really help and give the trainer the best opportunity to actually teach them something. Now, once they get into the training class, what should it look like? First of all, time it. No more than 90 to 120 minutes. And listen, guys, we've got to stop trying to overload with too many messages and too many behavioral change or skills developed in that time. The whole idea of drinking from a fire hose when it comes to training just doesn't work. So focused on 1 or 2 key messages. Now remember, the purpose of training is to stimulate. We got to stimulate thinking. So this is where you want to use things like discussions, questions, activities, games. The whole training experience, if you're bringing people into the classroom, should get them interested and curious about learning more. Now, a couple of things about the brain that I think is critical. Know that after 10 minutes of doing nothing, it shuts down. So if you're sitting in a class and it's just someone lecturing and it's very boring, understand that the brain is not going to pick up on anything. So your training program needs to be constantly stimulating those participants. The other thing that I think is important is that remember that the brain can be stimulated at any age, which means you can teach old dogs new tricks. So don't use the excuse that you've got an aging workforce and that they can't learn anymore, because in fact they can, as long as the training is delivered right. So you have a great training experience, it's interactive, people come out curious and interested to learn more. And now this is where the habit and behavioral change will start, because this is where socialization clicks in. This is where you have to reinforce that message at least 6 to 10 times in the next 30 days. This is where things like e-learning, videos, storytelling, even just having daily discussions about what they got out of the training is so very, very important. Remember, the training was just the catalyst. It kind of got things kicked off. But if you want behavioral change and you want skill development, it's the next 30 days that really counts. And then the final part, probably the most critical, is that you've got to have some type of coaching. You've got to have people, probably the manager, supervisor, giving your employees feedback in the moment, on the job, about the type of behaviors and skills they're trying to create. If you put the socialization and coaching together for that next 30 days, you have a really great opportunity to get your money's worth out of that training. So think about it. Ask yourself the question, is your training truly effective? And if it's not, then you want to start thinking about how that investment is being laid out. Unfortunately, I go to too many organizations today, I go to too many places, and I just tell them the training that's being delivered is a complete waste of time. But that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. As you're starting to look throughout the rest of the year, think about those 4 things: stimulation, training, socialization, and coaching. Put them all together and just maybe that training budget will make a difference. Thanks very much for listening. I'm Shane Green, the Culture Hacker. We'll see you again soon.